Hey crew, it's Ben, and I'm back with some more MBTI. It's not often I get introduced to somebody brand new, and today is one of those days. I did the Graham Hancock video. He mentioned this name, so I want to check this guy out. This is the banned TED Talk. I don't think it was banned for any YouTube reason, so I should be alright to use it. We're going to try and do a typology here. My typology is different than other people's typology. So what we are looking for is things or ideas. We are looking for organize or gather. We are looking for self or tribe, control or movement, direct or informative. If you're not sure what those things mean, up here in the top corner, there'll be a playlist. It says Infinite Integrations. It will take you through the basics. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive in and see what the big deal is with the TED Talk. Let's go.
The science delusion is the belief that science already understands the nature of reality in principle, leaving only the details to be filled in.
That is a big idea. I'm with it.
This is a very widespread belief in our society. It's the kind of belief system of people who say, I don't believe in God, I believe in science.
Yep.
It's a belief system which has now been spread to the entire world.
That is more true now than it was then.
But there's a conflict in the heart of science between science as a method of inquiry based on reason, evidence, hypothesis, and collective investigation, and science as a belief system or a worldview. And unfortunately, the worldview aspect of science has come to inhibit and constrict the free inquiry, which is the very lifeblood of the scientific endeavor.
All right, so far we're getting direct. He's not going off into rabbit holes yet, but this is a prepared speech. He is doing this like I'm doing this because this is what he wants to talk about. So we're going to see what direction it takes. Does he make a lot of we statements? Does he make a lot of I statements? Does he make a lot of things or idea statements?
Since the late 19th century, science has been conducted under the aspect of a belief system or worldview, which is essentially that of materialism, philosophical materialism. And the sciences are now wholly owned subsidiaries of the materialist worldview. I think that as we break out of it, the sciences will be regenerated. What I do in my book, The Science Delusion, which is called Science Set Free in the United States, is take the 10 dogmas or
that is a list of ideas, right?
Assumptions of science and turn them into questions.
10 dogmas would be ideas, right? It is dealing with things that are real, but it is dealing with the ideas of those things rather than dealing with the evidence of those things. It's dealing with the ideas of those things. That gives me more of an NI vibe. He is very much about organizing the past, but I think it's the past ideas.
Seeing how well they stand up if you look at them scientifically. None of them stand up very well. What I'm going to do is first run through what these 10 dogmas are, and then I'll only have time to discuss one or two of them in a bit more detail. But essentially the 10 dogmas, which are the default worldview of most educated people all over the world, are first that nature is mechanical or machine-like. The universe is like a machine, animals and plants are like machines, we're like machines. In fact, we are machines. We're lumbering robots, in Richard Dawkins' vivid phrase, with brains that are genetically programmed computers. Second, matter is...
Again, that's an idea, right? That's a grand idea. That's not dealing with physical facts, like if you were talking about Graham Hancock or if you were talking about Randall Carlson. They are dealing with the geological effects of these past events, these things that have happened. He is dealing more with these grand ideas. I want to see whether he is gathering them or if he is organizing them. It appears to be that he is organizing these ideas. Here are the 10 ideas. Here is why they're wrong.
It's unconscious. The whole universe is made up of unconscious matter. There's no consciousness in stars, in galaxies, in planets. in animals, in plants, and there ought not to be any in us either, if this theory is true. So a lot of the philosophy of mind over the last 100 years is trying to prove that we're not really conscious at all. So the matter's unconscious, then the laws of nature are fixed. This is dogma 3. The laws of nature are the same now as they were at the time of the Big Bang, and they'll be the same forever. Not just the laws, but the constants of nature are fixed, which is why they're called constants. Dogma 4, the total amount of matter and energy is always the same. It never changes in total quantity, except at the moment of the Big Bang, when it all sprang into existence from nowhere in a single instant.
Yeah, and they believe that it's going to return to nothing. It's neither created nor destroyed, but it kind of gets destroyed.
The 5th dogma is that nature is purposeless. There are no purposes in all nature, and the evolutionary process has no purpose or direction. Dogma 6, biological heredity is material. Everything you inherit is in your genes, or in epigenetic modifications of the genes, or in cytoplasmic inheritance. It's material. Dogma 7, memories are stored inside your brain as material traces. Somehow everything you remember is in your brain in modified nerve endings, phosphorylated proteins. No one knows how it works, but nevertheless, almost everyone in the scientific world believes it must be in the brain.
If you don't know, I absolutely believe in a greater power, the Lord God. I believe that we are very tiny little bitty slivers of that. And we are experiencing life for the divine. That's where I stand on things. My side of things does not fit with the scientific side of things.
Dogma 8, your mind is inside your head. All your consciousness is the activity of your brain and nothing more. Dogma 9, which follows from Dogma 8, psychic phenomena like telepathy are impossible.
You gotta love when science says, nope, that's impossible. There's no possible way. Just because we haven't proven it yet doesn't mean that it's not possible.
Your thoughts and intentions cannot have any effect at a distance because your mind's inside your head. Therefore, all the apparent evidence for telepathy and other psychic phenomena is illusory. People believe these things happen, but it's just because they don't know enough about statistics, or they're deceived by coincidences, or it's wishful thinking. And Dogma 10, mechanistic medicine is the only kind that really works. That's why governments only fund research into mechanistic medicine and ignore complementary and alternative therapies. Those can't possibly really work because they're not mechanistic. They may appear to work because people would have got better anyway, or because of the placebo effect. But the only kind that really works is mechanistic medicine.
Okay, so we're not really looking at informative, right? He is saying a lot. This is his talk. But he is not chasing rabbit holes. He is not over-explaining. He is not going into extreme detail. This is a very direct feel. We're getting into the part now. We're 5 minutes in, and in the next part, he's going to be talking about the arguments against one or two of these, right? And so we will get some more explanation in that. We will be looking to see if he is over-explaining and getting into repetitiveness. He does not appear to do that. These points went by quickly. He gave a brief little summary, a brief little descriptor, and then moved on to the next one for 10 in a row. He didn't try to chase a rabbit hole at all. That leans me towards direct. He seems to be dealing with the grand ideas. He seems to be narrowing ideas. This is giving me a very NI feel. What I'm interested in how he debunks things, like how he goes into these things don't really work. I want to see how he does that in a flexible manner or a rigid manner, and whether or not he is doing that primarily for himself or primarily for the tribe.
Well, this is the default worldview, which is held by almost all educated people all over the world. It's the basis of the educational system, the National Health Service, the Medical Research Council, governments, and it's just the default worldview of educated people. But I think every one of these dogmas is very, very questionable. And when you look at it, they fall apart. I'm going to take first the idea that the laws of nature are fixed. This is a hangover from an older worldview before the 1960s, when the Big Bang theory came in. People thought that the whole universe was eternal, governed by eternal mathematical laws. When the Big Bang came in, then that assumption continued, even though the Big Bang revealed a universe that's radically evolutionary, about 14 billion years old, growing and developing and evolving for 14 billion years, growing and cooling, and more structures and patterns appear within it. But the idea is all the laws of nature were completely fixed at the moment of the Big Bang, like a cosmic Napoleonic code. As my friend Terence McKenna used to say, modern science is based on the principle, give us one free miracle and we'll explain the rest.
I'm going to have to look up Terence McKenna.
And the one free miracle is the appearance of all the matter and energy in the universe and all the laws that govern it from nothing in a single instant. Well, in an evolutionary universe, why shouldn't the laws themselves evolve? After all, human laws do, and the idea of laws of nature is based on a metaphor with human laws. It's a very anthropocentric metaphor. Only humans have laws. In fact, only civilized societies have laws. As C.S. Lewis...
I don't know about that. It depends on your level of civilization, right? That would depend entirely upon what you consider civilized. Because I don't think you could find even the smallest tribe that did not have things that are effectively laws. They may not call them laws, but if the tribe says that you can't do this thing and you do this thing, then there is a punishment for it that is a law. I believe that there are 8 laws of creation that are firmly set in stone. I don't think that they are as mutable as this. I believe that all energy is just recycled. I understand that there does have to be some point where it started. I don't try to explain that, but I do think that there is a cyclical nature that is beyond the scope of what we currently look at in science. Yeah.
Once said, to say that a stone falls to earth because it's obeying a law makes it a man and even a citizen. It's a metaphor.
Not necessarily.
That we've got so used to, we forget.
But the fact that he's bringing in these examples from other people, right? He's not citing his own research. He's not quoting his own books. He's quoting other people's books, people who are well known in the tribe. Gives me a tribe feel. It's going to be hard to get a self-tribe off of this because this is his talk. But so far, he has kicked it back to the tribe at least twice in the last couple of minutes. And so that's leaning me towards tribe. I'm leaning towards NI. I'm leaning towards tribe. I'm not sure about flexible. He seems to be a little bit controlling. He's very much wanting to control this narrative, to bring it all into this box. And we'll see, because he does take into consideration the fact that they were taught wrong. So it's going to be a tough one to determine that.
Forget it's a metaphor. In an evolving universe, I think a much better idea is the idea of habits. I think the habits of nature evolve. The regularities of nature are essentially habitual. This was an idea put forward at the beginning of the 20th century by the American philosopher C.S. Peirce.
Another tribe kickback.
And it's an idea which various other philosophers have entertained, and it's one which I myself have developed into a scientific hypothesis, the hypothesis of morphic resonance, which is the basis of these evolving habits. According to this hypothesis, everything in nature has a kind of collective memory. Resonance occurs on the basis of similarity. As a young giraffe embryo grows in its mother's womb, it tunes in to the morphic resonance of previous giraffes. It draws on that collective memory. It grows like a giraffe and it behaves like a giraffe because it's drawing on this collective memory. It has to have the right genes to make the right proteins, but genes, in my view, are grossly overrated. They only account for the proteins that the organism can make, not the shape or the form or the behavior.
Okay, that is a very unorthodox view, right? I don't know where I would stand on that. It seems to me that genes make up the matter, whereas your consciousness makes up the personality. Those are two separate things. You are not the meat suit. You're the consciousness that rides inside the meat suit. I think that the meat suit is made by the genes. I don't know that I agree with him on that. But I do believe that there is a conscious memory with their species. I do believe that there is an version of the Akashic records that is accessible, that you can get into altered states and access accurately. I do believe that. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but I do believe that it is absolutely possible. I believe that it explains a lot of the things that we know.
Every species has a kind of collective memory. Even crystals do. This theory predicts that if you make a new kind of crystal for the first time, the very first time you make it, it won't have an existing habit. But once it crystallizes, then the next time you make it, there'll be an influence from the first crystals to the second ones all over the world by morphic resonance. It'll crystallize a bit easier. The third time, there'll be an influence from the first and second crystals. There is, in fact, good evidence that new compounds get easier to crystallize all around the world, just as this theory would predict.
This is the monkey mind theory to a degree. And like I said, I do believe that there is a repository. But it would be awfully hard to first form a new type of crystal, and then second, to test that theory. Like, that's an almost impossible testable theory, because for one, you would have to discover the new type of crystal before you actually crystallized it, which is in itself is a very Herculean task. But then you would have to measure it separately in different places as far as growth in the exact same conditions. It's very hard to execute that.
It also predicts that if you train animals to learn a new trick, for example, rats learn...
Now this is real. Like, this is the part where I do think that there is a collective stored memory. I really do. I believe that it is contained in God. That's where I think that resides. And that we access the divine in that way. That is what your divine function is actually doing, is touching that and pulling in that one specific area that you think about, or that you notice without even really thinking about it.
A new trick in London, then all around the world, rats of the same breed should learn the same trick quicker just because the rats have learned it here. And surprisingly, there's already evidence that this actually happens.
And that is a lot easier to prove than the crystal. But the crystal is inanimate. Like, I'm really not, I don't say that he's wrong. I say that I disagree with the hypothesis about the body. I think that the body, the physical, and the mental are not the same. And that it is unique to you, but it is merely a sliver of the divine. And because it is merely a sliver of the divine, it is individual. But the body itself, if that was true, there would be more evidence of evolutionary development inside of a species than we currently have. Like, the growth exponential for every species would be enormous. And we don't have that type of type variation. Up until very recently, all of humanity was relatively similar, agrarian, farm-based and hunter-gatherer based for most of history that we have. And I don't think that is because of the shared, I don't believe that the bodies, we still have the same bodies that Jesus was walking around in 2,000 years ago. There has been some variation in height and girth, but not greatly. Not greatly. There was fat people then. There are fat people now. There were short people then. There are short people now. the general scope of that is from your genetics. Like you don't just get a random mutation like you do, but not in a commonplace manner. The random genetic modification, like if this were true, right? If this hypothesis were true, and it would mean that people in the Arctic regions would have re-evolved hair thickly, like a coat of hair for insulative purposes. Because as the collective, knowing that you're in the colder atmosphere, your genetics would alter according to the mind. And the mind knows, right? And so it would resonate more hair. And then it would resonate more hair. It would resonate more hair. Instead of getting, hairless, pale people, you would get hairy, pale people. And I just don't see that as happening. In that, like, yeah.
Anyway,
I'm sorry. I'm interrupting this more than I normally do for typology. This is a very interesting talk. This is how my mind works.
That's my own hypothesis in a nutshell of morphic resonance. Everything depends on evolving habits, not on fixed laws. But I want to spend a few moments on the constants of nature too, because these are again assumed to be constant. Things like the gravitational constant, the speed of light, are called the fundamental constants. Are they really constant?
No. We've been proving that since then, that is not a constant.
Well, when I got interested in this question, I tried to find out. They're given in physics handbooks. Handbooks of physics list the existing fundamental constants, tell you their value. But I wanted to see if they'd changed, so I got the old volumes of physical handbooks. I went to the Patent Office Library here in London, and they're the only place I could find that kept the old volumes. Normally people throw them away when the new values come out. They throw away the old ones. When I did this, I found that the speed of light dropped between 1928 and 1945 by about 20 kilometers per second. It's a huge drop because they're given with errors of only fractions of decimal points of error. And yet, all over the world, it dropped, and they were all getting values very similar to each other with tiny errors. And then in 1945, it went up, 48, it went up again. And then people...
I'm not going to get into it now, but that is actually explainable.
People started getting very similar values again. I was very intrigued by this, and I couldn't make sense of it. So I went to see the head of metrology at the National Physical Laboratory in Teddington. Metrology is the science in which people measure constants. And I asked him about this. I said, what do you make of this drop in the speed of light between 1928 and 1945? And he said, oh dear, he said, you've uncovered the most embarrassing episode in the history of our science. So I said, well, could the speed of light have actually dropped? And that would have amazing implications if so. He said, no, of course it couldn't have actually dropped. It's a constant. So, well then how do you explain the fact everyone was finding it going much slower during that period? Is it because they were fudging their results to get what they thought other people should be getting, and the whole thing was just produced in the minds of physicists? We don't like to use the word fudge. I said, well, what do you prefer? He said, well, we prefer to call it intellectual phase locking.
Bruh. Like, think about that. Think about what this man just said. The guy in charge in the university in London of measuring constants just said, like whenever this was, that they know that it's not constant, and they know that other people are fudging their stuff. In the same breath. Now, I believe that it really did vary. I don't believe it is as constant as they would like us to believe. But, like, just the implications of the fact that this guy just said that.
So I said, well, if it was going on then, how can we be so sure it's not going on today? and that the present values are produced by intellectual phase locking. And he said, oh, we know that's not the case. I said, how do we know? He said, we've solved the problem. And I said, well, how? He said, well, we fixed the speed of light by definition in 1972. So I said, but it might still change. He said, yes, but we'd never know it because we've defined the meter in terms of the speed of light. So the units had changed with it. So he looked very pleased about that. They'd fixed that problem.
That's awesome.
But I said, well, then what about big G, the gravitational constant known in the trade as big G? It's written with a capital G, Newton's universal gravitational constant. That's varied by more than 1.3% in recent years. And it seems to vary from place to place and from
I talk about that too.
time to time. And he said, oh, well, those are just errors. And unfortunately, there are quite big errors with big G. So I said, well, what if it's really changing? I mean, perhaps it is really changing. And then I looked at how they do it. What happens is they measure it in different labs. They get different values on different days, and then they average them.
Again, think about what he just said. They're not taking the actual measurements of gravity, but instead are taking an average of the various fluctuations of gravity. So, what you're telling me is that gravity is not a constant. Because if it was a constant, then your instruments would pick up the exact same reading every single day. That's what a constant is. It is constantly the same thing. Now, listen. If there was some electromagnetic variation in the gravimetric processes, not saying that there is, but I believe that there is. Thunderbolts Project and Ben Davison over at Suspicious Observers. Then yeah, that makes sense. There would be variations in both the speed of light and in gravity. It would show up on your instruments that it was different.
And then other labs around the world do the same, and they come out usually with a rather different average. And then the International Committee on Metrology meets every 10 years or so and average the ones from labs around the world to come up with the value of big G. But what if G were actually fluctuating? What if it changed? There's already evidence, actually, that it changes throughout the day and throughout the year. What if the Earth, as it moves through the galactic environment, went through patches of dark matter or other environmental factors that could alter it? Maybe they all change together. What if these errors are going up together and down together? For more than 10 years, I've been trying to persuade metrologists to look at the raw data. In fact, I'm now trying to persuade them to put it online.
All right, so there we have another confirmation of tribe, right? He's doing this so that the tribe changes their ways. Not about him. It's not about his research, even though it is. It's about making sure that everybody has the correct big idea. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. There's still a few minutes left on the TED Talk, and if you want to check that out, you are more than welcome to do that. I don't do the links anymore. What we're looking at NJ, because he is going to be sort the ideas. He does it for the tribe, so that will be an ENJ. And the flexibility and the control is the hardest part of this in this particular instance, because there's no interaction between him except he's doing it and he's getting a laugh out of the audience. He's doing it by expressing the other side's argument and then correcting it. So that has given me a flex feel. I could be wrong on that because we don't have a very strong flex like we did with it, Graham Hancock. We do have a flex though. There is a flex here. So I'm going to say an ENFJ. He is not chasing rabbit holes, so he's going to be direct. That will be an ENFJ alternate. And give me 1 second and I will open this up for me and we'll go through it real quick. All right, so an ENFJ alternate, because the TI is I want to keep the information for myself. I'm going to give you as much information as it takes to make my point, and that's it. Whereas the SE for a regular ENFJ would be I'm going to give you this point, and here's a supporting point, and here's another supporting point, and here's a little bit off topic point that kind of sort of maybe supports that point. It is the overgiving of information. So it seems like he is based in ethics. He is very much observing the ethics of the tribe, and he's not very happy with it. The fact that they are not accurately recording the speed of light and gravity is kind of a big deal. And it is an ethical big deal. So he is noticing, without even thinking about it, that ethics problem. And he's viewing it through the lens of his NI. What he feels responsible for is the big idea. Is gravity actually how we understand it? Is the speed of light actually and he's about that idea, not really the thing. He's not doing the experiment. He's kind of correlating the data, but not really. He's taking that big idea and he's poking holes in it. So that's going to be, I'm responsible for making sure that this best idea, the constant of the speed of gravity, is actually the constant of gravity. He's going to get very defensive over his logic. You could see that in the examples he was giving, speaking with this researcher at the university. He is using his logic to kind of poke holes in it. He's like, that doesn't quite make sense. He's pushing back and getting defensive over his own yes-no questions there. Is the speed of light constant, yes or no? And when they say no, he's like, wait, what? The throat, the thing that he's going to misunderstand and miscommunicate, is the actual physical things. It is the current things. It is the exploration of new things. He is dealing with the big idea. He is bringing in new things, but he's maybe not communicating them as effectively as he could. The heart, what he really wants to do is morality. He wants to be in his morals. He wants to have his feelings sorted out. And because he is correcting the ethics, he is trying to stand morally. So he's doing what his heart desires. The solar plexus is what's going to feed you. That is the new possibility. Well, maybe the reason why the constant of the speed of light is not really constant. That is a new idea. He is trying to bring that in. And by bringing that in, he's feeding his soul. The sacral is what you intentionally choose the wrong side of. That is the TE. That is other people's thoughts and rationale. He knows other people's thoughts and rationale. He's choosing the other side of that. Now, in this case, it happens to be that he's choosing the correct other side of that. That is not always the case. Some people just choose the wrong side of the TE and fight it regardless of whatever the justification may be. Does not seem to be the case with him. And for base, the organization is going to get you, right? That's all. You're not really going to be as organized as you would like to be. You are going to tend to show up late to meetings. You're going to tend to misfile things. Not because you want to, it just kind of happens. You get kind of sidetracked. He seems to be rather well functioning within his stack. And again, he is a successful person in his field because he has learned how to build his stack. He's learned how to support it. He knows how to stand morally now. He knows how to bring the new ideas in a way that the tribe's going to take. This was very good. I like this. I'm going to have to look into some more from him. Y'all make sure to check out some more from him too. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a not too difficult topic. Once you grab the basics of this, it's not that difficult to do. The basics will be linked up here on the Infinite Integrations playlist. If you're not familiar with what I'm doing, that's where you find it. If you'd like to see some more of the ENFJs, up here it'll be another link that says more of this type, something like that. Click on that and it'll take you to other examples. Hopefully, this is helpful to people. I am trying to help you to identify in real life scenarios ways to pick out the N or the S, ways to pick out the E or the I, the F or the T, the J or the P. I don't really normally talk about the J and the P because that is where the parent slot falls. If it is, it's a pain in the ass. I don't really like it. That's why I don't deal with it much. But anyway, to the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Till next time, I love you. This has been pittstake. Peace.